The question sat in my throat for weeks, like a pill I couldn't swallow. It wasn't that I didn't love Adam. I loved him in the small, boring ways that are the real proof. How he remembered the brand of coffee I liked without asking. How he warmed my side of the bed with his hand if he got in first. How he always checked that my car had enough gas before a storm. I loved him in the big ways, too. The ones you can't explain without sounding dramatic. The way my body still recognized him as home even when my mind was spinning out. The problem was that lately, home had started to rearrange itself around a truth I hadn't known we were carrying. It began, as these things often do, in a drawer. I had been looking for a charger in our dresser, top left, the junk drawer where loose buttons and old receipts and random cords went to die. I opened it and saw, folded with careful precision, a soft piece of fabric I didn't recognize. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Adam's. Not as he existed in the daylight parts of our life. It was smooth and quiet and unmistakably chosen. I remember standing there with my hand on the drawer edge, feeling the ground shift under something I thought was solid. And then I remember Adam's voice behind me, tentative. "Lisa." I turned. He was in the doorway with that expression I'd seen only a handful of times. Fear, not of being caught doing something wrong, but of being seen doing something true. "I can explain," he said quickly. "I should say I did a lot of things right in that moment. I didn't shout. I didn't mock him. I didn't make it about me. But I also didn't immediately become some perfectly serene partner who knew exactly what to say. My heart was pounding and my thoughts were sprinting in every direction at once. So what came out of my mouth was simple and not graceful. "Okay, explain." Adam sat on the edge of the bed like he didn't trust his legs. He talked the way someone talks when they're walking across thin ice, careful with every step. He told me that for years, since he was young, since before he had the language, he'd been drawn to certain kinds of softness. That wearing traditionally feminine clothes wasn't a joke to him or a dare. It was relief. It turned down the volume of his anxiety. It made his body feel like it could unclench. He didn't call it a kink. He didn't turn it into a performance. He spoke about it the way you might speak about music that calms you or a ritual that steadies you. His voice shook anyway, because even calm things can be terrifying when you've been hiding them. I remember asking, "Is this who you are?" And Adam swallowed hard, eyes wet. "It's part of me," he said. "I think. I don't know how big the part is." The phrase I didn't realize would haunt me came right after. "I don't know." At first, we built rules the way people build fences around something newly discovered in their backyard. We decided there would be honesty, always. We decided there would be privacy because the world can be cruel and we didn't owe it an invitation. We decided, for a while, that certain kinds of expression would stay at home because home was our controlled climate, our safe room. And then, in small increments, the fence kept moving. It wasn't dramatic at first. It was an extra item in the laundry. A new package arriving, slid under his arm like a secret, even though I'd told him he didn't have to hide. A night when he seemed unusually tense and then, later, oddly calm. And when I asked why, he said, "I wore something soft under my clothes today. Just for me." It helped. I wanted to be supportive. I did in many ways. I reminded myself that fabric can be comfort, that gender expression can be complicated without being catastrophic, that love isn't only for the easy versions of people. I told myself that labels weren't required for us to communicate, but my anxiety is clever. It will use anything to build a staircase to panic. "How far does this go?" it whispered at night. "Does he want to be a woman?" It asked in the morning while I brushed my teeth and stared at my own reflection like I was trying to find the moment I'd stopped understanding my life. Will I wake up one day and my husband will be gone? Will I be the wife who didn't see it coming? Will I be expected to have a perfect reaction to a perfect transition? Will I lose him, even if he stays? I hated myself for those thoughts. They felt unfair. They felt like I was making his vulnerability about my fear. But the thoughts kept coming anyway, and the worst part was the not knowing. Not knowing is what anxiety drinks like water. Adam had started taking more time on the nights he dressed. He wasn't just putting on a soft layer and returning to the couch. He was creating a whole ritual: shower, lotion, careful grooming, sometimes experimenting with hair or subtle makeup. It wasn't cartoonish. It wasn't a caricature. It was attentive, almost reverent, like he was finally giving himself permission to be tended to. Those nights did something to him. His shoulders dropped. His laugh got easier. He looked younger, not because he was pretending, but because he wasn't bracing. I watched all of that and felt two things at once: love and a private grief I couldn't name. Because part of me had built a marriage on the assumption that my husband was a fixed category, a stable identity, and now I was realizing that the person I loved was more expansive than my assumptions, and that expansion was both beautiful and terrifying. The question finally came out on a Friday night that was so ordinary it felt almost rude for something life-shifting to happen. It had rained all day, the steady gray kind that makes the city feel quieter. We'd ordered Thai food and eaten on the couch with the windows cracked just enough to hear the soft hiss of tires on wet pavement. After dinner, Adam had vanished into the bedroom with his garment bag the way he always did now, like he was carrying something delicate. I cleaned up the containers in the kitchen, rinsing them, stacking them, doing busy work because my hands needed something to do while my mind ran through its usual loop. When I returned to the living room, the lamp was on, the room warm and golden, and Adam stepped out of the hallway. He was dressed in a simple, elegant way. Nothing extreme, nothing theatrical. A soft dress that fell to his knees, sleeves that skimmed his arms, and a light layer on his legs that made him move carefully across the rug. His hair was the same, still his, but combed with intention. His face looked open. "Okay?" he asked quietly, as if my reaction was the weather. "You look good," I said, and meant it. "You look peaceful." His smile was small and grateful. "I feel peaceful." He sat beside me and leaned back into the couch. For a few minutes, we watched a mindless show and let the room hold us. His hand rested on the cushion between us, not reaching, just there. I could tell he was relaxed, his breath deep, his jaw loose, his gaze softer. And that's what cracked me open. Because if it had been just about the clothes, I could have filed it under comfort ritual and tried to stop spiraling. But it wasn't just clothes. It was the way he looked like himself and also like someone I was meeting for the first time. It was the way his whole nervous system seemed to settle into this version of him. The thought arrived with sharp clarity. What if this isn't a detour? What if this is the road? I turned the volume down on the TV and set the remote aside. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. "Adam," I said. He looked over. "Yeah?" My mouth went dry. "Can we talk?" I asked, which is what people say when they're about to pick up a fragile object with both hands. Adam's expression tightened slightly, like he was bracing for impact. "Okay," he said. "Yeah." I took a breath, then another. Then I tried to speak from the part of me that loved him, not the part of me that wanted certainty like a drug. "I've been wondering something," I said carefully, "and I don't want to ask it in a way that feels like an accusation or a trap." Adam's eyes stayed on mine, alert, soft. "Ask me," he said. The rain pressed quietly against the windows. The lamp buzzed faintly. The world didn't stop to witness this moment, which made it feel both safer and lonelier. "Do you want to be a woman?" I asked. The words fell into the space between us like a stone dropped into water, small, heavy, rippling outward. Adam didn't answer immediately. His face went very still. Not angry, not defensive, just stunned, like he'd been asked a question he'd been avoiding in his own head. He looked down at his hands, then back at me. His throat worked. "I don't know," he said finally. My chest tightened. Of course he didn't know. Of course the person doing the exploring wasn't the person who could offer me tidy reassurance. Still, my anxiety flared, hungry for more. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, because I could feel the old reflex to repair his discomfort, to smooth things over. "If that's too much—" "It's not too much," Adam interrupted softly. He shook his head once, like he was trying to clear it. It's the question. I don't have a clean answer." I swallowed. "Can you tell me what you do have?" I asked. Adam's eyes shone slightly, not quite tears, but close enough that my throat tightened in sympathy. "I have feelings," he said quietly. "I have moments. Like right now, I feel right. Like my skin fits better. Like I'm not acting." I nodded slowly, holding myself still. "And when you're not dressed like this?" I asked. Adam's mouth twisted, conflicted. "Sometimes I feel fine," he said. "Sometimes I feel like I'm wearing a costume that everyone agrees is normal, and I'm the only one who feels how heavy it is." That sentence landed in me with a dull ache. I'd had my own versions of that heaviness, different but familiar in the way shame feels in the body. "Do you want people to see you like this?" I asked. Adam hesitated. "Part of me does," he admitted. "And part of me is terrified. Sometimes I imagine being able to be softer all the time. Sometimes I imagine not having to switch. And then I get scared because I don't know if that's a fantasy or a truth." I let that sit. A fantasy or a truth. Those were not opposites, I realized. Sometimes fantasies are how truths introduce themselves. My anxiety tried to seize the steering wheel. "Say it," it urged. "Demand an answer. Get clarity. Get a plan." Instead, I forced myself to ask a different question, the one that felt harder because it didn't promise relief. "Do you want me to call you something different?" I asked. "A different name, pronouns, anything like that?" Adam's eyes widened slightly, as if he hadn't expected me to offer that kind of experiment without a dramatic declaration first. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "I don't know," he said again, then corrected himself, voice quieter. I think I might want to try, just privately, with you, to see what it does to me." My stomach fluttered, fear and tenderness tangled together. "And if it does something?" I asked softly. Adam exhaled, long and shaky. "Then we keep talking," he said. "Then we don't pretend we didn't learn it. But I'm not at a place where I can say, I am this with certainty. I'm sorry." The apology cracked my heart. "Don't apologize for not knowing," I said, and my voice shook. "I think I've been asking you to give me certainty so I don't have to feel anxious. That's not fair." Adam's gaze softened, relief washing through his face like warmth. "I don't want to hurt you," he whispered. "I know," I said immediately, "and I don't want to hurt you either. I'm just scared." Adam nodded, eyes wet now. "Me too." We sat in that shared fear for a moment, which was strangely intimate. When people talk about love, they talk about romance and passion and compatibility. They don't talk enough about this part, the part where you admit you're scared and you stay anyway. "What are you most scared of?" Adam asked. The question made my chest tighten. I could have listed a dozen practical fears: family reactions, workplace risks, safety, the bureaucracy of change. But underneath all of those was the rawest fear, the one I barely admitted even to myself. "That I'm going to lose you," I whispered. "Not like, you'll leave me tomorrow, but like, you'll become someone I don't know how to be married to." Adam reached across the cushions slowly, giving me time to pull away if I needed to. I didn't. His fingers wrapped around mine with careful warmth. "I'm still me," he said quietly, "even when I don't look like the version you expected." Tears rose in my eyes, sudden and hot. "I know," I said, voice thick. "And I love you. My brain is loud." Adam's thumb stroked my knuckle, a grounding motion. "Can we make a plan for the loud brain?" he asked. I laughed once, wet and surprised, because of course he'd want a plan. That's Adam, scared, and still trying to build structure around the fear. "Okay," I said. "Yeah, a plan." We talked for a long time, not in a dramatic, life-altering speech way, but in the steady, practical way of two people who had built a life together and didn't want to burn it down. We agreed on experiments instead of declarations. We agreed on check-ins instead of assumptions. We agreed that neither of us would use shame as a weapon, even when we were scared. We decided that once a week, on a night when we were both home and calm, we'd try something small, a different name, just once, just to see. We decided that if Adam wanted to explore more publicly, we'd talk about safety and pacing before taking steps. We decided to look for a couples therapist with experience in gender exploration, not because we were broken, but because we wanted support navigating something delicate. "What about sexuality?" I asked at one point, the other question that had been hovering in the corners. "Do you feel like this is connected to who you're attracted to?" Adam's face flushed slightly. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Sometimes when I feel more like this, my attractions feel wider, less policed. But I don't want to rush into anything. I don't want to use people as experiments." I felt a surge of respect, sharp and clean. "Thank you," I said, "for caring about that." When the conversation finally slowed, it was late. The rain had stopped. The apartment was quiet in the way it gets when you've said something true and your body is trying to catch up. Adam stood to change for bed, then hesitated and looked back at me. "Are you okay?" he asked. I wanted to say yes, but that felt dishonest. I wanted to say no, but that felt too bleak. So I said the truest thing I had. "I'm okay enough," I said, "and I'm proud of us for talking." Adam's smile was small and wounded and beautiful. "Me too," he said. Later, in bed, he curled around me the way he always did, his chest against my back, his breath warming my shoulder. In the dark, I thought about the question again. Do you want to be a woman? And how much I'd wanted it to have a clean, easy answer. But maybe the real lesson was that love doesn't require immediate certainty. Maybe love requires the ability to sit in the not knowing without making it a punishment. I reached back and found his hand under the blanket, threading my fingers through his. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" he murmured, sleepy. "For letting me ask," I said. "And for not lying just to make me feel better." Adam kissed my shoulder, a small, gentle press. "Thank you," he whispered back, "for staying." In the weeks that followed, we treated honesty like a practice, not a one-time event. Some nights we tried the name, and Adam would go very still, then laugh softly like he didn't know whether to cry. Some nights we didn't, because life was too loud, and we chose rest instead of pushing. Sometimes my anxiety spiked, and I wanted to back away into old rules. And then I remembered how his face looked when he said, "My skin fits better." I remembered that I'd rather meet the truth than be haunted by guesses. We didn't solve him. We didn't solve us. But something shifted anyway. The question stopped being a threat and became a door we could open together, slowly, with our hands on the frame, checking for splinters, letting light in a little at a time. I still don't know where Adam's path leads. Neither does he. But I know what we chose that night on the couch with rain tapping the windows and fear sitting between us like a third person. We chose curiosity over panic. We chose communication over control. We chose to keep loving each other in real time. not in the version of the story we thought we'd signed up for. And for now, that choice feels like something solid enough to stand on.